Welcome to the Therapist Burnout Podcast, episode 75. Wow, it is summer here in the United States in the state of Maine. I just played outdoor tennis, which was only the second time that I've done that this calendar year. It is so cold here, y'all, or rainy. I think we had 13 Saturdays in a row with rain here in my state. So I was grateful for the sun. It was in the 70s. I feel like I got too much sun, and that's probably a good thing, but yeah, my skin wasn't ready for it. So maybe not a good thing. Anyway, I'm just grateful. I'm in a grateful place, I think, because my contract work has wrapped up. I was playing tennis outside. I feel like, literal birds in the background here as I talk to you. Yeah, I am reflective. And so I'll give you before I start rambling, I just want to tell you what we're talking about today. So I'm talking about clearing the clutter in your mind and really just a deep dive on cognitive burnout. I've talked about this many times on the podcast, but I think many times we're really just burned out from so much inputs, mental overload, tasks that are required of us as therapists, as humans. If you are parenting or in a parenting season, oh my gosh, parenting or caring for things, animals, whatever you want, all the things. Yeah. So, we're going to talk a little bit about how, if you're burned out, or even if you're not burned out, how to externalize what's going on mentally. So, I think that mental list that just constantly goes. Because what we really need to do in burnout and just as modern humans is to decrease our mental working list in general. Many of the therapists that I talk with me about feeling like they're forgetting things. They used to be so organized, they can't even focus on a note. They say they feel like they're working all the time, but they're not getting anything done. Every time I sit down to work, feeling overwhelmed or scrolling. And I think that's really a symptom. Yes, it's a symptom of burnout. And it's also kind of the cognitive aspects of burnout that I see from the therapists that I work with. So I'm going to talk about that. Just a pause on the pen pal list. So I have restructured the newsletter. I really want this to be a valuable piece of content for you. So just as I want this podcast to be valuable, I'm not just regurgitating my podcast show notes, which I used to do more of. I think I did zhuzh it up and maybe add a little extra story or something like that. But I really want this to be like a standalone. I want the burnout pen pal list. It's a tongue twister. I might rename it. I don't know. I'm in squirrel brain moment right now. You just have to be patient with me. But I feel like I want to rename it because I really want it to kind of stand alone. Maybe it's just a pen pal list. Maybe it's just in my head. Maybe no one cares. And I'm talking in a room by myself. So you know how that goes if you're a podcaster, if you're not. Maybe you don't have the experience of talking to yourself a lot, which I do. At any rate, so on the pen pal list, I am talking about a story perhaps from the podcast or like an offshoot. Maybe it's something more vulnerable I didn't want to share because, this is for public consumption. The newsletter is personal, so it feels more intimate. Kind of a short story. And then I'm sharing with you something from my mat. So I'm a yoga teacher and I teach yoga ish stuff, but I really have been more of a yoga student lately. And I love music. So a lot of times I do yoga to lyrical music, which is regulating for the nervous system. And I'm including a song or just a moment from my practice. And so this week I put on my pen pal list a song by Trevor Hall, which and these words that I think will forever be in my memory now. You can't rush your healing, and darkness has its teachings. And I was taking a class at home, and I was like in like the twist segment of this yoga class where you're just kind of like doing these. It's like a spinal rotation. So it's a deep stretch and the song hit and just tears were flowing down my face because I think last month I was overscheduled and it's my work in as a school psychologist a consultant in schools, whatever I call myself. Anyway, that's what I do during the school year. At least right now, that's what my job was when I left therapy. Hi, I'm Dr. Jen Blanchett. If you don't know me, welcome to the podcast. I had a practice for 9 years and I closed that one. And I've been doing contract work and coaching with therapists. So when I made that transition, that's the work that I've been doing. And so all of the evaluations are really backloaded in the back half of the school year. So really like winter, gosh, so much stuttering. The winter through the spring is just straight out, just pumping out reports. And I could have totally tailored my workload. I didn't have to say yes to all this. And so part of me, when I did this to myself, right? And I had this moment with my partner where he was like, Jen, you make your own schedule. And I was like, I am really bad at it. I'm really, really bad at it about taking on too much. Like I keep learning this lesson like over and over and over again. And maybe that's just because of the person I am. I don't know. Maybe it's my brain is just estimates that I can do so much more than I can. I can hold more than I can. And I have a lot of self-judgment about that. I should or I think I'm over the shoulds, like, I should be able to hold it. I think I'm at the point where I'm like, I just can't hold it. And, that's just what it is. I can't hold as much as I used to hold. And I think for a long time, especially, like, the first couple years out of my practice, I'm more than 2 years out of leaving therapy, I just felt like, well, number 1, it's real scarcity, right? Like, I had to bring in at least $50,000 into the home. And so that real scarcity was like, can I do any work? Like, can I do any work that is okay for my nervous system and feel like I can do this and not crumble and not feel like I'm going to go into some kind of depressive coma thing that happens sometimes now if I push myself too much. So I go into pretty much dorsal vagal shutdown. If you're like from a polyvagal lens or from a nervous system lens, I really will shut down. Sometimes that will be a couple days, and it seems like it's just gotten longer. I know what it is now, which is helpful in some ways, but then other ways I'm just like, like why do I have to keep dealing with this? And I think in the last episode I was pretty raw, like coming out of that, just reflecting on it. That if we push ourselves just so hard for so long, I think for many of you that have been in this career for many years, if you're mid-career or even if you're just starting out, because I think the burnout research tells us that actually our newer clinicians are more prone to burnout and also with Gen Z. So for my Gen Z clinicians that might listen to this, you're more prone to it. And there's been lots of reasons, I think, speculating in the research about that. I think because of the financial pressures that Gen Z are under, that millennials and X, I'm a millennial, I guess. Xel, I'm kind of on the cusp. Yeah, there's been way more pressures on Gen Z to actually be able to make it. It's a hard economy, especially right now if you're just coming into the field. And so I feel for my Gen Z clinicians who are just coming up into the field. And so please learn from me not to take on so much because I know we need therapists. So if you're hearing this, I know I market to people that want to quit often with my programs because that's the people that seem to want my help right now. Although I'm going to be starting things that are for kind of all the above, like therapists that are just like, I just can't do so much one to one, or I'm going to quit. I don't know what this is. So it's more focused on burnout recovery and like next steps out of that, which by the way, if you haven't tried a break, that's my first recommendation. Just take a break. Just take a good old break. Let's see if you can come back to it if you want to. If you don't. So, gosh, where and what am I talking about today, guys? Okay, I think I was talking about the newsletter. Yeah, so anyway, on the newsletter, I am talking about like things that are just hitting me. I just feel like I'm in like this, I am kind of seeking out healing in a way I haven't before. In a way I think I was just more in that initial survival mode after burnout, and maybe a lot of us were from the pandemic. Like, okay, like I think things are calming down, but really maybe now we're just starting to heal. Write to me and tell me if you're feeling the same thing. It was a lot. It was a lot to go through for all of us just as the human race, and just to kind of metabolize into our brains and bodies. So I think I have been doing several things And I think this coincides with the break. I have more time to do these healing practices. I have more time to walk and be in nature. And I'm outside because I'm in nature because it's warm here. Finally, I'm writing to you more about that process. And I'm even thinking about a separate like Substack or something like that to even if I just write it for myself. And maybe some of you want to come on that kind of healing journey with me in my meandering thoughts on that from the mat, from my reflections, from my meditations that I've been doing. But I've been thinking so much about you, about just number one, I'm proud of myself. I'll say it. I'm proud of myself that I have stuck with 75 episodes. My goal initially for this podcast was 100, that I wasn't going to stop before 100. And then I was going to make a decision because I wanted to stick with something for that long because I think it really was going to take 100 episodes for me to see if I gave this a good trial to see if this was something that could last, right? If this was a project that I did, number one, could it replace some of my income from doing podcasting, by doing consulting work on the other side of this for burnout recovery for clinicians. Or and now I'm building a course. It's not just a course, but it'll be a plan if you need a plan to close your practice. And I never thought starting this podcast that's what I would do. And I think that just speaks to sometimes like the path becomes illuminated as we're walking on it. And I don't know who said this past week, but it's momentum versus motivation. So I decided to this time, because I started a podcast before, shout out to TBI therapist. If you have a specialty in brain injury, that was my specialty. And I had like about 40 episodes on that. And you could say that was a failure, right? You could say that was a failure and that business failed. Or I did something, I acted, and it wasn't the thing that was going to be a career for me. But perhaps it helped me learn how to podcast. And podcasting has been something that I've really enjoyed, that I really like. And I know I just hear from you guys all the time writing into me like, Jen, I want to do something beyond one to one. I want to do something in online business. And I told you last week, I'm like, I don't recommend that if you're burned out. But then that's what I did when I was burned out. So I still don't think that that's the way to like, I'm going to start this online business. And when I'm burned out to replace my income totally, please don't do that because that's what I tried to do. And I think if that's like, I need this to replace my income in 6 months, don't do that. That's not something you want to do. However, if you have something that's like, I have this program in me, or I have this like a book in me, or I have a podcast that I want to do, and I can see a path to this being like, in a couple years, it could replace some of my income. And I'm going to work on this. This is going to be a project that I have, and I have time and space for that. Then great. I love that kind of slow, methodical, putting in the reps ideas, blogging or podcasting or just doing something different, learning a new skill. So I'm not saying no. Not that you need my permission. You don't need it at all. But I think as someone who now has a little more privilege because of where I am, where I built this platform with just showing up week after week. I think my platform has grown and that's a beautiful thing. I think the community that I'm building is very exciting to me and I want to steward it really well. I really do. I really want, that's why you don't hear people selling you AI notes because I'm like, no, I could have partnered with those people. They wanted to put my name behind stuff like that. No, I'm not doing that. Nope. You won't get an advertisement here on the podcast. Will I be open to some sponsors eventually? Possibly, but they have to be a right fit for you guys. I have to really feel like it's aligned or it's just a no go. It's not going to happen. So I will continue to sponsor this podcast just with my own coaching services and perhaps a membership one day. I don't know. I can't even think about like a Facebook group and moderating any of that. That just sounds awful, but perhaps something that feels less burnout like. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe you guys have ideas. Who knows? Anywho, so on the newsletter, I'm talking about healing. That might go into a separate whole like blog or I don't know where it's going to go. But I feel like this bubbling, this hopeful part of me coming out that has not been there for a while. And I'm like, thank you, you're here again. Honestly. I am grateful to feel that bubble again of hope because I want to provide people who hear this, who write into me and tell me they're hopeless, that I can sound hopeful and it be legit because I'm not going to be like, "You're gonna get through it. I know it's gonna be all right," and rah, rah, because it's not like the therapist can read through that bullshit in 2 seconds. And I think that's why, like, doing this healing work and I don't know where that's going for me, I'm not sure. So, right now, it looks like me trying to find more connection in my life. And I'll just share this reflection. I'm in another coaching container actually for weight loss, but it's more than weight loss. And I always thought like, oh, you're in a weight loss group. Like what that's kind of even like what do we even think about that? Because, I really believe in like I love whatever body that people show up in. So is it me changing myself and leaning into, like, thin culture? And so I even felt shame that I wanted to lose weight and that I was in this coaching container, which is more intuitive eating. It's more of like CBT kind of focused. So, yes, it has a weight loss focus, and I know that's not for everybody, but it is for me, and it's helpful to me. And so sometimes we, like, get in our head about the thing that actually works for us because we're thinking of how someone would judge us or think something about it. This is just my human brain. This is what my brain does. Like, oh, why do I even bring that up in the podcast? Like, what would they think that I was actively trying to lose weight and all of that. Oh my gosh. These are the places my little brain gets into. Okay, so let's get to the topic today. If you just, maybe I'll put like a timestamp. Like you can just fast forward through all the crap that I said, which actually I think is not crap. It's actually what people reflect back to me as well, that I don't think I'm unique in the way that my brain is, especially because many of the therapists that I work with are overthinkers as well. We like just we hold space for people and we, think about different possibilities and that is a beautiful side of us because that side of my brain that really is thinking of other people that wants to care for other people, it has a beautiful side to it, and I think the opposite side of it is that I can overanalyze at times and not think about my own needs, and that is the other side of it. Alright, so your distracted brain. So I also talked about this a little bit in yeah, so I had several episodes in the spring. So I had episode 63, 64, and 65. So that's therapist burnout in the brain while we feel like we're stuck in survival mode. I think that one is really helpful to understand why your brain feels foggy, you feel exhausted, especially if you're in burnout and if there is a level trauma that you're experiencing, especially for my trauma therapists. Certainly think about that. I was an EMDR therapist in practice. And so I think that is a layer that is really helpful to think about and to look at. Had tips for overwhelm for therapists in 64. Something that is just one of the hallmark symptoms that people come and talk to me about is they just feel so overwhelmed. And a lot of times I'm helping therapists with trying to start a burnout recovery practice or trying to close their practice or trying to get their practice unstuck because they want to stay in the work, but they feel like they can't hold anything else. So that one is really helpful for that. And then really 65, which is kind of piggybacking off of this today, is overbooked and overwhelmed. And that's how to look at your calendar and my process for that. So much of this framework that I talk about in structured rest. So that's the series that I'm talking about. So structured rest when I worked in brain injury rehab, we didn't expect a brain injury survivor to be able to organize their life, to prioritize things that they needed to prioritize, to remember appointments, to perform at work without support. And I see so many parallels from that work with burnout therapists. I see therapists who have the expectations of themselves that they're holding themselves to that standard of, well, when I first came into this work, I was able to do 8 sessions a day and I had energy and it was great and it was really going really well. And so why can't I do that now? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. For me, when I had a lot of energy in therapy as a new therapist, I was not a mother. I didn't have the responsibilities I have. I didn't own a home. I didn't have a dog at the time. Well, I did later on postdoc, but he's like, he's like a great addition. He was a great addition. He passed in the past fall, and I have a puppy now. Oh, she's great. I love her, and she's a lot of work. But we don't have that expectation. We expect to hold all of the things, which children, homeownership, caring for elderly parents, or whatever you have on your plate now that was not on your plate when you were younger, when you had time at night to just completely decompress and didn't have any other demands on you. You have demands on you. And a lot of times I talk about the second shift that starts when you come home. So you come in the door and you're on. And one of my favorite coaches says it's on like Donkey Kong and we are like going until bedtime. And many of you are. So when you come home, you're dealing with children or you're getting dinner ready, and that's what you're doing. And you're having these expectations that you should be organized. You should be able to prioritize your rest and get in your movement and eat nutritious meals and make them for your family. And it's not working. It's not working. So, as I talked about before, and I've talked about several neuroscience episodes on your brain and burnout, we do know that there's reduced processing speed, executive skill differences, and memory impairment. Basically, your brain CPU is overheating. Emotional exhaustion leads to measurable decreases in attention and cognitive flexibility. So, if I told you, you just need to rest, you just need self care, just take a mental health day, it's going to be fine. That shit does not work because you need release from the cognitive load that you are under. Your life is unsustainable. And so if I tell you to take time off, like sometimes people say it feels more stressful actually to reschedule a clinical day. They're like, it's harder. Like they feel like it's harder to do that and to like figure out, okay, I'm going to leave for a week and I have to figure out all of that stuff, like who's going to move their appointments and all that. Some of you say it's not. You're like, my caseload is what it is. I'm just burnout. It doesn't matter who I see anymore. I'm burnout from the work. So a lot of people can be in different places. I hear different things depending on where you've been. So I think we need to first reduce your cognitive load. And I think one of the tools that I recommend is doing a brain dump. It is backed by research. Doing it one time on one day is helpful for that one time and that one day. Just like doing a deep breathing exercise one time on one day it's not going to make a difference, right? So, all of these burnout recovery practices, are things that we have to practice, are things that we have to put in place because if we don't do them, then we just do life as normal. Life as usual. It's not going to allow us to put the things back in. So, in later episodes in the series, I'm going to talk about what things do we actually need? How can we add in rest, add in movement, add in play? We cannot do that if our life feels too full. It's just not possible. So, this is one of these daily or weekly practices that sometimes I don't do them every week, every day. But when I get in the habit of doing them, I love to do it on a Sunday, especially when I'm in my full time kind of work season, writing everything down: clinical, personal, emotional, invisible tasks, sidebar. So I saw an article in The Atlantic. It was actually cited by Jonathan Haidt, who wrote Anxious Generation. And he was talking about parents actually in my state. So in South Portland, which is only like 20, 30 minutes away from me. So parents in this community, so maybe like 10 to 20 parents decided to all get landlines so their kids could communicate and call each other. And I was just like, my gosh, I do not like planning my kids' play dates. Hate it. I tried to think of my mom, and I asked her even like one time, I think when she was up last time visiting me, and I was like, "Mom, do you plan my play dates?" She's like, "No, you usually just talk to your friends, and then you would ask me if you could go, and then maybe I'd call the mom." I don't even think she called her all the time. I think she was just like, "Okay, bye." Like it just brought me over there. Like we're going over there on Friday, and I'd just show up. I don't think they talked a lot. His research also highlights how women, especially women now, are more overscheduled and actually in for men as well, male and female identifying folks spend more time parenting than previous generations. So we are spending more time parenting than previous generations. Anyway, as I was thinking of brain dumping, I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta schedule a play date for this one or that one. I almost want to go to like a summer schedule. Like, can you just come over it's open. And I thought of doing that in the school year, like every Friday, you can just have your friends over. Then I'm like, you know what? I need to rest on, I don't want kids over my house on Fridays. Oh, gosh, I just get them to play outside most of the time, and that's a little bit better. Anyway, so think of everything. All the play dates, the clinical work. For me, that's when I'm in report writing season. I'm like, okay, I gotta test this one. I have to score that one. I have to write this one. I have to do this parent meeting or this observation. And so all those things are laid out for me. And if it's podcast episodes, I just do this weekly. So that's in my Rolodex. I'm dating myself, Rolodex. Here we go. That is in my mind to do that. Most therapists are carrying like 100 tabs in their mind and think they're feeling when they can't hold them all. So if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, let's just do it right now. I'm going to do it and I'm going to pause this podcast and come back to you. And maybe you'll see the difference in the way I'm speaking because I'm squirrely. Okay. I just did my own brain dump and it's just nice to look at it and to like get it out. It's just crazy to think how much we hold or how much is really in your brain that you forget to just externalize right for 5 minutes. I could have gone longer, perhaps. I don't even know how long I should have timed myself. Usually ask people to time themselves for 5 minutes and then look at that list. If there are things they need to do, put them in their schedule to do them or have a list to do them so that you're not just holding that information in your brain. I think to then look at anything that you don't need to do. Of any obligations that you don't need to do at all. I need to do all the things that I put down on my list. Things I did come up with some things that I could delay. So we're going to look for delegate, delete. I didn't see anything I could delete. Delay. Is there anything that I can delay or can postpone? I had on my list that I was going to have some podcast guests that I wanted to schedule next week. I'm going to put that off till July. So you just get me. Oh, it's just me talking. But I do want to have some podcast guests come on the podcast, and I want to get those done before the school year starts so that I am not, you know, trying to schedule that. It's harder to schedule podcast guests for me. And then delegate. Is there anything that I can outsource or ask for support with? And I'm going to do a big jump of that coming up soon. I hope to start looking for an employee to help me as I go into the school year to help me with report writing and just organizing my report writing and also helping me with podcasting and for my coaching and consulting offers I do. So I'm excited about that to actually get more support and outsource some of the things that I don't need to do. Like I need to do this podcast. That's something I need to do. Do I need to organize all my posts? Probably not. I do want to still hold my newsletter. That's like a little precious thing to me. So I will keep my newsletter and I might think of other things that I want to delegate. Like maybe I don't have to put this into the podcast player myself or edit it, which I actually like editing. I don't like doing the social posting as much and doing all of that. So maybe like having someone help me will write my social posts, but they're going to be from my content, like from my transcripts. And someone give me some drafts of social posts that I could do. And perhaps once they're ready, just post them for me. And then I'll comment myself. I'll comment to my posts, of course, because it just feels weird to have someone who would comment for me. Feels weird. That wouldn't be something I do. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like just that task alone can be really helpful. And then what I have people do is put things right into their calendar while they're on it. So, when am I going to do those tasks that I need to get to, whatever they are? So that your brain doesn't have to hold it and it knows it has a place for it. Perhaps it's like, it's just going to sit in my notebook till I get to it. Perfect. Like you don't have to put it into your calendar, but there's things that you want to get to. And there's actually some good research on making time for the things that are important to you. So I had on here my newsletter and that I could do voice notes of like the reflections I have perhaps after class. which then got me thinking of, ooh, should I do like a private podcast? That might be something really fun to do. Maybe if I could do it from my car. The car sessions from the mat with Jen. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so I think like organizing your thoughts can really help you, number one, reduce the overwhelm, but also see what is important. Like, what are the things that I do want to get to, which I want to talk to you about next week, is really focus on like those things that we need to prioritize, we want to get to, but the other things that I had on here, I'm like, I don't want to put meal planning on there. I have to figure out what we're eating next week. Yes, it's something I need to do, but it's not, it just gets, wrapped into those tasks of things that we have to do, like feeding your family. I know I have to do it and it always gets done, but sometimes it's not always pretty. So I think prioritizing like, how am I going to do that? When am I going to do that? And perhaps putting in like a grocery order could be something that I do, or having my partner do that. Although sometimes when I tell him to do that, it's like, well, we can just have like franks and beans and cook sausages. And I'm like, I'm not eating that. No. So there are consequences for delegating in that context. Oh my gosh. All right. So I'd have you think about that we can't add any rest, clarity, like figuring out our life if you are flooded constantly with just tasks and things you have to do. So I'd have you reflect on this. Was there one thing that you came up with today that you can delete, delay, or delegate? Next week, we're going to do a deep dive into your calendar and just how my mind has evolved on like a calendar audit that I recommend people to do, which is really like an energy audit. And it's not like woo woo energy. I'm just like, where are your energy drains in your calendar? And that could be people too. Gosh, I just had an example of that I don't know if I want to share on the podcast. Maybe it'll be in the newsletter. I'm writing down newsletter. It's just a story that I told my partner about this week. Well, I don't think they would be on my newsletter list, but it still feels weird. But anyway, good fodder, right? So we'll talk about that energy audit for your calendar, just figuring out I take like more of a polyvagal heart math kind of focus on that. Like where is that depleting emotion? Like what is that word we notice that in our week, and how can we first take out the depletion before we put something back in? And again, like I just think of my brain injury survivors with this because oh my gosh, I was thinking of several people that I worked with when they were trying to find their own healing through their journey. They just felt like I will never feel human again. It just felt like constantly they were bumping up against things they could not do. And that's a lot of times what burnout feels like. It's, oh, I can't do that. And that's not working. And this doesn't work. Okay. I would just say that eventually it does get easier. Eventually something will shift. I don't know when that is for you. I never knew, like when I was working with clients after brain injury, like they might have had difficulties they deal with throughout their life, but the way they felt in that present moment, right after their injury or in the same circumstances they were in, it did shift. And so I hope this was helpful in helping you have a small shift, a small, meaningful shift today, this week. And then hopefully, as you think about doing that as a regular cadence, maybe incorporating this as something you do weekly, daily, and why it's important from neuroscience, why it's important from an energy perspective. So next week, we'll talk a little bit about your schedule and your calendar rather, and how you can really look at it differently as a tool that can be something that supports you versus something you just look at and want to close the laptop every time you see it. Because I know that feeling too, believe me. All right. I will talk with you all next week. Have a good one.